Welcome back to our reading of King Arthur and the Round Table. Today we begin our part 4 of King Arthur. This is the end of the Round Table. In the last chapter we read about the achievement of the Grail, about how the Holy Grail was found and how Sir Galahad pretty much accompanied the Holy Grail back to heaven, but with it took his life. So he died. The angels took him and the Holy Grail back to heaven, never to be seen by humans again. And after this, Sir Galahad was buried with Dindrain. And then Sir Percival became a monk. And Sir Bors stayed with him as a loyal friend, but did not become a monk. Sir Percival lived for a little over a year, and then he died. And Sir Bors buried him along with Sir Galahad and Dindrain. And then Sir Bors decided it was time to return to the realm of Britain. And then as he returns, many people did not even know who he was anymore. All of his old friends and fellow knights of the Round Table had become old men. And even King Arthur himself is a middle-aged man. And he's seeing that with the disappearance and the return of the Holy Grail to heaven, that his round table is broken, never to be the same again. So we're going to read how it came to the end of the Round Table. And with this, we are on chapter 16, Sir Lancelot and the Lily Maid of Astolat. The Round Table was scattered on the quest of the Holy Grail. A few knights had returned, but the court was empty and spiritless. It was hot summer weather, and King Arthur decided to hold a tournament to keep up their spirits and their practice in arms. Sometimes Sir Lancelot did not fight in these jousts because he always won. Now that discouraged the young and gave rise to tricks and foul play by the wicked. On this occasion, he thought he would fight in disguise on one of the visiting teams. It was always possible to join a team on the day of the joust, and a knight could keep his helmet on and not show his face. If he had a good horse and armor and knew the rules of chivalry, he was welcome. The tournament was to be in Winchester. The court was in London, so they all rode down through the leafy lanes and green fields of Surrey and Hampshire. On the way, they lodged at Astolat. Behind them, in new armor, visor down, rode Sir Lancelot, his shield with the famous gold leopards on a blue background hidden under a covering. Astolat was full and busy with the arrival of the court. It had a castle in which lived an old-fashioned family who did not mix much with the great world. The lady of the castle was dead, and old Sir Bernard had brought up his 2 sons and 1 daughter in a quiet, simple way. The sons, Torry and Lavaine, were new knights, and the daughter Elaine was her father's darling, young, beautiful, and good, and dearly loved by all the people who called her the Lily Maid of Astolat. Now, guys, not to be confused, this is not the same Elaine that married Sir Lancelot. The old, quiet castle did not attract the people of the court, but Lancelot rode there and was given a warm welcome, though no one knew him. When they had all made friends, Lancelot explained that he wanted to joust unrecognized, which was quite usual, and asked if he might borrow a plain shield, leaving his there to pick up on his way back. Sir Bernard said that his eldest son, Sir Torre, had been hurt in his first joust and could not go to the tournament, and that the visitor could have his shield. He asked him to take with him Lavaine, his younger son, whose first joust it would be. Now the men stood talking, and Elaine listened silently, too shy at first to look much at the stranger or to speak, but gradually she began to look up at him and saw the tall, strong figure, the dark hair and sun-tanned face, the deep eyes that looked on all men with love. Elaine lifted up her eyes and loved him deeply, a love that was her doom, because Lancelot's true love, his one and only love, was always the queen. The evening passed, and Sir Lancelot told tales of the king's wars. Early the next morning, he and Lavaine got ready to go. Elaine came to them and asked very shyly if Sir Lancelot would wear her favor at the tournament. Now, a favor is a token of affection or remembrance. Oftentimes, it would be like a certain colored little handkerchief or something, and they would stuff it down in their armor and have just a little bit hanging out. He answered that he had never done that in his life, not saying that the reason was that he was the true knight only of the queen. Elaine replied that that would make it all the more complete a disguise for him. And, moved by this idea, Sir Lancelot accepted. He tied the favor, a red sleeve sewn with pearls, on his helmet. Sir Lavaine brought him his brother's shield, and Lancelot asked Elaine to keep his shield for him until he came again. Then the knights rode away, followed by their squires. On the way to Camelot, Sir Lancelot told Lavaine who he was. The young man gave his promise to keep the secret. Meanwhile, Elaine, at home, had taken the stranger's shield up to her room and started to make a cover for it, copying the design of the gold leopards on blue in embroidery. When the tournament day arrived, Sir Lancelot and Sir Lavaine rode out to Winchester quietly and came by a lane to a little leafy wood where the teams opposing the king were camped. Now Sir Lancelot was wearing the red sleeve on his helmet. They waited in hiding while the teams lined up. The trumpets blew, and the opening charges were made. Against King Arthur were the lords of North Wales and of Northumberland, and many others. Sir Lancelot's expert eye followed every move. Lavaine, his lance ready, waited quivering for the word of command. So he's got his pole ready to go, right? His lance. He's ready, and he's quivering because he's nervous. This is his very first time in a joust. One knight after another on each side charged, and the battle began to take shape. King Arthur's side pressed the others hard. "See that group of good knights?" said Sir Lancelot through his visor. "They hold together like boars chased by hounds." So boars are wild pigs chased by dogs. That's what hounds are. "Now, with your help, we shall make those knights who are chasing these fellows on our side go back as fast as they are now coming forward." Now he fixed his eye on the nerve center of the fight and charged right in. His first impact sent flying 5 knights: Sir Kay, Sir Brandiles, Sir Sagramore, Sir Dodinus, and Sir Griflet. Young Lavaine sent down 2 good knights, Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere. Lancelot did not pause. That was part of the secret of his superiority in fighting. He gave no one time to recover or to think. Before half the side knew that he had joined in, he had unhorsed 7 more. So he had knocked 7 more off their horses, and Lavaine another. But in the next charge, Sir Lancelot's horse was hurled to the ground, and Sir Bors' spear pierced Sir Lancelot's side and broke off. So Sir Lancelot has just been stabbed in the side, and the lance has broken. When Lavaine saw the horse fall, he wheeled to the King of the Scots, who happened to be unguarded, and knocked him off his horse. He grabbed the bridle and forced his way right in and held everyone off while Sir Lancelot got onto the horse. Then began a fight that no one ever forgot. Sir Lancelot thought that he would die from his wound, and he was determined to die well, meaning he wanted to do something good before he died. Nobody could match him. He struck down Sir Bors, Sir Ector, Sir Lionel, and 3 more. The first three got on horseback again and charged him. He sent them flying again and performed the full act of victory on each by taking off their helmets and proving that if he wished, he could cut off their heads. A knight so defeated was out of the battle. So he didn't really take off their heads. He just took off their helmet and threatened them that he's laying claim that he's the victor. He's won victory over them because he could have killed them. So it's still basically a game, right? So they're just having to agree that they would have been dead. So they are now out of the tournament. So a knight so defeated was out of the battle. 40 knights did these two champions strike down. So you're talking Sir Lancelot and Sir Lavaine, who, remember, Sir Lavaine, this is his very first joust. So you have Sir Lancelot and Sir Lavaine have now taken out 40 different knights. The match was won, and the king and the round table had lost. Because remember, Sir Lancelot has been competing against the king because he wanted to be in disguise. The heralds. So the heralds are somebody who would be kind of like the announcer at a football game, right? The heralds were the announcers of a tournament in the medieval time. So the heralds announced that the prize was awarded to the knight wearing the red sleeve, but the knight was nowhere to be found. At the trumpet's sound, he had turned and ridden fast into the leafy wood, followed by Sir Lavaine, feeling his wound worsen as the heat of the battle died away. Often, guys, when you get hurt, or any of you, right, if you ever get hurt, a lot of times there's what's called adrenaline in your body, and adrenaline can keep you going for quite some time. And then when whatever is causing the adrenaline rush, so like the battle or running for help or something like that, once that kind of wears away, then you start to feel your wounds worse. And then the extent of your injuries really comes to mind, and you know that things are pretty bad, right? An old friend of his, once a knight and now a hermit and doctor, lived in the woods, and Sir Lancelot rode there fast. He was almost unconscious when they arrived. The hermit recognized him at once. He carried him in with Sir Lavaine and began to fight to save his life. Meantime, King Arthur ordered a search to be made for the victor knight. Sir Gawain organized a hunt around Winchester, but without success. So the prize was not awarded, and the court returned to London. On the way back, Sir Gawain happened to lodge at the castle in Astolat. The family received him eagerly and pressed him for news of the tournament. When Sir Gawain heard their story and discovered that the knight with the red sleeve had left his shield in the castle, he begged to see it. As soon as he saw the gold leopards on the blue background, he cried out, "Sir Lancelot!" Because that's his friend, right? So the news was told, and Sir Bors, who had been the one to wound him, was stricken to the heart, for he loved Sir Lancelot more than anyone in the world. Elaine, the Lily Maid, persuaded her father to let her ride out in search of the wounded knight and Sir Lavaine. By luck, she came on her brother exercising his horse in a field. She told him of Sir Gawain's coming and persuaded him to lead her to Sir Lancelot. From then on, she never left the wounded man, but nursed him day and night. Days passed, and he lay desperately ill. Then came Sir Bors, who found him at last and stood beside the bed in such grief it made Sir Lancelot's eyes twinkle, and he said, cheer up, cousin. If I had not been so full of pride, I would have said who I was, and you would not have wounded me. Let us say no more about it. So he's saying, I forgive you. It was not your fault. It was mine, because he's the one that deceived everyone. There was no way for Sir Bors to have known that it was Sir Lancelot the whole time. Gradually, the battle for his life was won, and at last he was out of danger. Slowly, he grew better and was able to sit on his horse and do more each day. At last came the day that Elaine was dreading. When they left the hermitage and went back to the castle at Astolat, eventually he was well enough to leave Astolat and return to court. Elaine knew that she could not go back to her former life without him. She asked her father and her two brothers to come with her and went to Sir Lancelot. My lord Sir Lancelot, she said, I see you are really going away. Fair knight, have mercy on me, and do not let me die for your love. Sir Lancelot had never run away from difficulties in his life. He did not now. What do you want me to do? He asked gravely. Sir, marry me, she said. My dear, thank you from my heart, but I am resolved never to be a married man. Then I shall die for love of you. You will not, answered Sir Lancelot. I am twice your age, my dear, and you will grow to love me differently. You will not always feel like this. Some day you will meet a young man your own age, and all my life you will call on me to fight for you and be your knight. Sir, of all this I will have nothing, if you will not marry me. I warn you, Sir Lancelot. My good days are done. But Sir Lancelot answered, That I cannot do. Elaine gave a cry and fell unconscious on the ground. Her women carried her away to her room. There was silence. Sir Lancelot picked up his belt and gloves and was ready to go. Turning to young Lavaine, he asked him harshly if he was still willing to follow him. Sir, I will always follow you unless you order me to leave you. So Sir Lancelot and Lavaine rode away. Elaine lay motionless on her bed. For 9 days and nights she lay without eating, drinking, or sleeping, uttering no sound but Sir Lancelot's name. Every day the people gathered at the castle gate and wept at the news that their lily maid was fading away. So she's dying of a broken heart. She loves a man that cannot love her back. On the 10th day she roused herself. She spoke of her love and said she did no wrong because all kinds of love came from God. She asked her father to write her short history in a letter and put the letter in her hand as soon as she was dead, to dress her in her finest clothes and lay her in a barge draped all in black, to put their old servant in charge and let the river carry her to London, to the king's palace at Westminster. The court and Sir Lancelot would see her and read the letter and give her burial. King Arthur and Queen Guinevere were sitting talking in a deep window seat overlooking the river. Into their view glided the black draped barge, with one white figure lying in it and one old man sitting at the oars. It came to the palace steps and there remained, rocking gently. The king and queen went hand in hand to look on the lily maid who lay there. Slowly the knights gathered around, and then came Sir Lancelot. The king took the letter from her hand and read it. Elaine's last message was, Most noble knight, my lord Sir Lancelot, now has death separated us. I loved you, and I was called the Lily Maid of Astolat. Unto all ladies I tell my sad story, but I ask you to pray for my soul and give me burial. This is my last request. Pray for my soul, Sir Lancelot. All eyes were on Sir Lancelot as the letter ended. He told the king that Elaine's death had not been his fault and called Sir Lavaine, her brother, to prove it. She was both fair and good, and I owed her I owed much to her, but she loved me beyond measure. When the entire story was told, the Lily Maid was carried into the palace. Next day, the court attended her burial, which was performed as magnificently as for a queen. Then the servant rowed the barge home to the mourning castle of Astolat. And this particular type of mourning means in great sadness. It's the expression of deep sorrow or sadness for someone who has died. Typically, it involves following certain conventions, such as wearing black. So this is not mourning as in the morning when the sun comes up. This is mourning when it has a U in it. It means of deep sadness. So poor Lancelot, he devoted his entire life to a woman who he could never be married to, right? He was in love with Queen Guinevere. His entire life, he was in love with the queen, whom could never love him back the way that he loved her, because she could never be married to him. She was already married to the king. So he devoted his entire life to being her knight. And along his life, along the way, he's had two women who fell incredibly in love with him, both named Elaine, right? His first woman who tricked him into marriage was Elaine, and that was the mother of Galahad. And then the second woman, who was the Lily Maid of Astolat, was also named Elaine, but this was a different Elaine. And she was incredibly in love with him, so in love with him, in fact, that she died of a broken heart because she refused to eat, drink, or sleep, and eventually it caused her death. And so then she desired to be sent back to him so that he would read her final words and understand that she had loved him to the death. And she refused to ever give anyone else a chance. So it's kind of a sad story of a man who loved someone so much that he could never give his love to other women, right? It's kind of an unfortunate thing. All right, the next chapter is The Queen and the Poisoned Apple. I wonder what kind of Disney story might come to mind when you think of a queen and a poisoned apple. All right, I'll see you again next time.